about so divine union. I've talked a little bit about this rising divine energies within us all, which is an energy stream connected to a really expansive cosmic plan for this earth story. And the rising divine energies are helping us to come into union. Now, coming into union is really like coming into unity with self, which really is a choice to like almost like dissolve your self-preservation on an egoic level and to merge with infinite intelligence, to merge with the most divine aspects of yourself, which is you in union with the totality of all there is. So divine union ultimately dissolves the gender role construct. So no longer are we feeding a polarity of this is the male role and this is the female role, or this is the masculine energy and this is the feminine energy. There is a clear co-working, you could say. So to me, and here this is sometimes so tricky for us to understand, but we are all sovereign total beings. Every single one of us is a unified whole. So a man has feminine and masculine polarities, and a woman has feminine and masculine polarities. So within each individual, regardless of their gender, they will carry those divine energies, okay? And those divine energies will bring their polarities into union. So a lot of the masks that we have to see and unveil are masks of a program of how we are programmed to think, behave, and be in the world based on our gender. So coming into union from my perspective, coming into union with self has unprogrammed a lot of the conditions of what it means to be a woman. So I talked to you guys about this. For me, I had to witness programs of seeking approval from a man. I had to witness programs of giving my body away for his attention or for his love. Recognizing an ancestral programming of female submission and oppression is that there really was a time, and not a too distant past, and still very much a real story on this planet, that if women are not married off, they end up on the street or they end up in prostitution or sex trafficking like that. That is still very much a reality for the female story, as is the masculine story of I'm the provider, I have to hold it all together, I have to blah, 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 blah. So we have to really own and accept that the distortions that we're seeing acted out in men and women are pure reflections of each other. So like the abuser and the submissive. So like part of the feminine or more women's voices, you could say, so the divine rising in the collective is helping women heal their pain. And in the women's healing, women's rising in power is going to help him let go of the construct of he's supposed to provide and he's supposed to have all the answers and he's supposed to be all this strength. But women need to begin to own their strength so that he doesn't have to carry the burden anymore in that collective program. So once he acknowledges that he doesn't have to carry the burden, he can also begin breaking down. He can also begin tapping into his feminine to help him hold space for himself and to help him heal in the most loving way possible, so that more and more of us can meet on that loving level. Something that I'm just experiencing now is there's still like being in this space of divine union and being in this space of divine love, or people still reject it because they're not truly, they're still not quite holding it, and so they project stuff, and projection is always obvious because like where you are, like, so for me a projection is just clear as day. Yeah, because I know myself. So my union of self, my totality, makes it very clear when someone is not allowing their totality, or not owning their totality, because they're still putting what they're feeling onto me, right? Or putting what they're not feeling, or putting what they're not getting onto me as well. So that's clear for any of you guys on the path, as far as like knowing self, knowing self as a unified being. It's not like I'm an example of a divine feminine. I'm just a human being practicing balance and honoring their divinity, honoring their totality, choosing to love the total self, right? And and working through the polarity construct of us against them, and even having been in it for a long time, of like female suppression and patriarchy and male domination, and now choosing to rise above that, of like pretending like our roles are wildly different is not necessarily useful. And something I've experienced more recently is like, even in the subtlest ways, I've attracted men in my life who still want to tell me what to do and what to think and how to be in the world. You know, even I have a really good conscious friend who literally just verbally attacked me until I started to cry. And then once I broke down, he proceeded to patronize me and tell me I needed to like be more cautious of what I said, of how I speak. Which, I'm sorry, that's like exactly the old paradigm, isn't it? Like, tell me what to do and how to be for you. Because my truth triggers you, I'm supposed to stay silent. You know, like, and that's just a lesser physical representation. It's more subtle, but it's still the same energy thread of the witch hunts, right? Of being put on trial, of literally having society wipe us out because they didn't understand the intuition, they didn't understand the bleeding, they didn't understand. So collective wounding is mass. It's en masse. It's not like because women look like we're the victims in a society dominated by one gender. That is an illusion itself as well. Domination and control is in us when we deny the divine. That's the truth across the board. All of us are manipulating one another until we connect to the truth of the divine. Because it's not for the most part. That's part of like this shifting thing, is like we have been in the darkness and we have given our power away to externals. As we reclaim that, the external dark forces do leave, quite truly, but we have to keep owning and transforming the disempowered thread, which blames and attacks the external. That's the disempowered thread. Our divine rising is sovereignty. It's rising into purity and divine sovereignty. So we're totally protected by divine energies, totally enfolded by like divine light and love, which means you really can pioneer and do and live and manifest in any way you wish. I just choose always to kind of shine back and be like, we, in a sense, trying to define our roles as men and women at this point, I would say, is only a distraction from the work. Trying to claim, I'm a man and this is how I should be in the world, or this is how men should be in the world, rather than just being in connection and working with the reflections that we're working with in a really open-hearted and honest way. And that's something I'm finding tricky with social media, you guys, is like recently what I've asked for is like physical people. And that's just addressing this whole like world of social media, and yes, like potentially disconnecting from human connection. So for me personally, and it's amazing, it's happened within 24 hours. I've met someone creative, they've got like a drone, or like, yay, exciting, and they're a physical representation of the support that I've been asking for, rather than this sort of vague, to me now that's no longer, that's like my old self pretending that I was showing up for myself but not really. So now it was like, no, like I need the physical, actual showing up, and clear exchanges, not wafty, not vague, not going back and forth, like just that presence, There's support there. It's real. It's tangible, and and the exchange is spoken as well. So when there is an energetic exchange, it's spoken, right? If it's not spoken, there's often shadiness or insecurity, and there's games, or just lack of clarity, right? So literally, like, this is just me being like, we're all just people. We're all just human, and we all have divine union within self. We all have a total completion process within self, so that we're not hooking into our fulfillment via stuff or via other people, right? We're literally totally fulfilled in self. When that fulfillment happens in self, I really have no desire to try to like tell men and women like this is how women should be and look, and this is how men should be and look, and if you're not doing that, because I just don't know how that works. Like how does that happen? Because we have people of just such variety. We just have humanity is just pure individuation and variety. So we might as well just allow that to be there and stop trying to like control and fix in place what we think our roles are. And that's there again something that we take from this old paradigm, and then we lace all of our ego bullshit into our, it's like that in our yoga. It's like the yoga community and teachers at some point coming along and trying to trademark and own the yoga poses, and you're just like, or even really standardizing spiritual practices is a little bit of an illusion, because, well, it's a massive illusion, because you can't, when spiritual sovereignty is next level, so you can't box it in. Even trying to box it in, it's almost laughable. So it's almost like getting to that point where I find this whole like defining the divine feminine and defining the divine masculine is just another level of like deflection and control and compartmentalization to make people think, because again, the masses are easily manipulated. You hook into their pain body and you can get them to buy stuff from you because you can trigger all of their insecurities. And then so they go from like trying to hold it all together, but then they have to be the divine masculine, and then they try to put all these mechanical things in place to control the egoic projection of the divine masculine versus the caveman, strong masculine. I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at there? It's like there's this progression. Same like, so I go from like being like cool party girl, but then that doesn't suit me. So then I have to go to the other extreme and be like this like super peaceful yogi spiritual person. But then that is also like, I'm like, but I don't even know if that's real for me. Like I don't even know if I really resonate with all that stuff anyway. So because to me, and that was like straight up, you guys, that was part of my journey, was like when I did go to India and live the yogic lifestyle, and I spent a month on an ashram, and I've spent time like in those services, in that service karma yoga lifestyle before. And I remember just looking around and being like, so the directors and all the yogis that are here, like none of them really feel like joyful to me. None of them like feel happy. And then I'm also aware of the fact that like I could hide away in an ashram, but then there's still like this whole world out there of people starving and people struggling and people in the system and da 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 da. So I really saw that kind of disparity of like, it's great to be able to run. And here's the thing, kind of annoying, but my true like what I experienced. So going to like I went to I think 3 different yoga schools when I was in India, and all of them I was like, oh, okay. So like going to India and practicing yoga is like totally white privilege. Like the poor people in India aren't doing yoga. So yeah, again, like when I went to university, I'm like venturing in, and plus then you get all these like kind of like Western people going to India and just like worshiping the gurus who are making all the money, and and like I'm sure they support their communities in some way, but there is a little bit of just like, the privileged business Indian gurus in India are just making money and living well. And yeah, I'm sure they give, and it's all part of like sharing the practice or whatever. It just didn't resonate with me. Like escaping to live in an ashram in India, I was like, yeah, but I still have work to do. I have my brothers and sisters in the Western world who are being shoved into a system of control which does not serve anybody anymore. It's not wrong or bad, it just doesn't serve us as a totality. So we have to move, we have to shift it, right? We have to evolve. So yeah, And I'm also aware that like a lot of the yoga traditions and the yoga schools that we have coming from India are male dominated. Women were not allowed to practice yoga, right? So like us being able to practice yoga is also part of bringing greater balance into the world. Me living in a world where I'm actually allowed to speak my truth, even though it might upset people, and I can feel that it upsets people sometimes, and that might hurt me, but I'm also aware that I have to keep speaking up. I just, there's no, I did a share on Facebook about it. Like, there's no, I can't stop myself. Now I've opened, it's like opening the Pandora box is open. I have to keep showing up and expressing. I'm purely being guided. It's like I can't stop myself, you know? So sharing these insights with you guys is really important because we can often get stuck and distracted in protecting other shades of our ego. And I see it in those we have awakenings, and then we start to dive into these spiritual practices, and then before we know it, we're hooking into more egoic projection. So now instead of being some hardcore like business guy, then we have to go into being like this hardcore conscious spiritual guy, and then we do all the spiritual things, but then weirdly when we start doing all these spiritual things, we use it to power over other people. It's like, well, and I've had that. You know, even simple things like the fact that I drink coffee, I've had like teetotal yogis like laugh at me and be like, you're not yogic because you drink coffee. Meanwhile, they eat meat and drink wine, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But there again, it's like seeing for me why I just keep and why I'm super transparent about like I don't know anything. You don't need to take anything I say for truth or real at all. I'm literally just a person figuring stuff out. And yes, my life has gotten better and better. And yes, I feel better and better in my life. But how I got there, there's not necessarily one right way. And what I hope to offer people is that you can bypass a lot of bullshit by just listening and getting to know who you are and not buying into other people's stories if it doesn't feel good to you and if it doesn't feel true. Because I spent a lot of time trying to please other people because they lived in such a way that they're like they could kind of pretend they were better than other people, and I bought into that. I worked really hard to please people and almost put myself down because you know they live like that, they did it up, but then I started to pick up on all this like judgment and like just next level, just go next level. And like in our healing communities, actually, like this is distorted and kind of fucked up, but like we'll actually keep people sick. We will keep telling people they have these certain problems, but because them coming back to us as healers pays money, right? And so for me, breaking free out of that was really important as well. It was like you know, people can do yoga asanas for as long as they like, but if they're still judging each other, the asanas don't work. Sorry, guys. You know, like, and I mean, it will work on a certain level, but you have to be an earnest student of yoga, and you have to kind of like practice inside your heart, you know, in every encounter, and not just like once a week when you're on the mat and you're like, yeah, I'll get more bendy and my body will look better. And that's often how we start. That's often how we get into it. And then the power of the practice and the actual yoking effects of the practice, they start to heal us, right? And it expands our consciousness, and it takes us on this wild and amazing ride. I'm just fully aware, like often intellectuals hook into the work, but they're not embodying it. So they're not necessarily doing the asanas. They're not sitting in meditation for long enough. They're not really working themselves out. And the truth is, they're still blaming. They're not truly holding space for themselves to feel the depth of their emotional body, to clear out the vibrational densities that exist in their energy field, which is just right in their bodies, right? So instead of owning how they feel, they put it on other people and then go around in mental circles like, yeah, love, light, or yeah, like, oh yeah, transform this and that. But there's just talk. It's just mental regurgitation. There's no actual physical embodiment. That's what takes the inner grit and the work, right? Is to just be able to sit with that, which again, simply because of how things have played out, like a lot of women right now are on the rise because of this social condition of male domination. The oppression of women has allowed them to sit with these energies and work with them for a little bit longer. That's the only kind of like maybe little difference I can suss out. And there again, it's a massive stereotype, or not stereotype, but generalization. So it's going to be true for some of you and not true for others. But typically, you know, I've been practicing sitting with my emotions for most of my life. And so the clarity that I have is true and real, and it's never at this point coming from judgment, but I can feel the hard edges, like reflecting back stuff to people is hard for them, and that's why I just have to always keep coming back to love and keep really permissioning myself and making sure, like, that's part of self-responsibility. I always have to sit with it and make sure I'm not projecting, or am I, how do I own that and work with the betrayal energy, or work with the narcissistic energy, or work with that energy, not attack it, not defend against it, not be loving, hold space for it, be loving towards it, but also not tolerate the entangling, right? That's something I've recently noticed is, like, again, when we're too concerned about people pleasing, we can get entangled easily in kind of like drama filled energy, or just like unclear energy. And that's something that I'm less desiring, right? I don't even want to get entangled. So I'm asking of my intuition to be even more aware of the subtleties of energies coming into my energy field and how I work with that. So guys and girls, let's own the fact that we're all just reflections of each other, and that there's no right or wrong or good or bad when it comes to masculine and feminine polarities. And there's also no specific way a woman's meant to be or a man's meant to be. We all feel, we all think. Men have cycles too. It's not just women who have a cycle, men have cycles too. Once you start to feel, once men get connected to the feeling center, you'll start to pick up on your cycles. And then ultimately, once we become divine in union with self, and we come together with other, and in a sexual sense, we come together to use sexual energy as a co-creative manifestation tool with two whole aspects. That's powerful. Very powerful manifestation energies there, right? But it has to be from two fully unified and fully conscious humans. As long as the other one's still seeking itself in other, there's a distortion, which means the creation is still going to be slightly distorted. And all we ultimately have to do is keep just being the truth of who we are. There's nothing else from that. It's all because it's all pretend. That's the weird thing about all this reality, is like, it's just all people pretending to be disempowered and pretending to complain and pretending we live in this horrible, horrible, disgusting old world. We just pretend, because the truth of the present moment in most instances is like all is well. People are sitting in cafes moaning about how life is shit, and people are sitting around in really beautiful homes talking about how horrible and how untrustworthy the world is. And I'm thinking, hold on, why aren't we here now living in the flow of the goodness of life? Because my experience usually is that's what is, and that is what is for my own self, like the paradise of living in paradise in this beautiful planet. But I sort of dip my toe sometimes. I sort of dip my toe around the fact that there are humans still very much in patterns of dysfunction, and there are humans still very much in need of service and need of love. And that's my service ultimately, is to reach out and give all love as I would myself, because I'm capable of giving myself that love now in a very, very tender way, a very tender, loving love. I never imagined it possible, but when you start doing the real, like, inner child healing, it's very tender. It's a very tender, unconditional love. Like, again, the best mother ever. Those inner child wounds of, really, it's, to me, that's when we start to heal into curiosity, innocence, and awe. Suddenly we can reclaim and recapture our childlike innocence because we're no longer afraid of ourselves. That's a big part of the awakening journey, is awakening to self-creation, the self-God, that you are the total creator. And as you reclaim every disowned aspect, every fractured aspect of soul self, as you reclaim and integrate, you remember the memory of the totality of who you are comes back, and then you radiate that unified field. So every being that comes into your field is being healed. It's just recognizing that healing's uncomfortable. So people, depending on what they can handle, they'll tap in and then they'll withdraw, or they'll merge fully and then they'll come out. There is a transformative energy in our presence, not just the words, and that's what can kind of throw people sometimes, is they're wanting the energy, but they're not quite sure what it is, and so they tread delicately, or they push back completely. And again, that's like just being straight up, guys. I'm getting a lot of love. I get a lot of love from you guys. I get a lot of love and support, but I also have the polarized aspect being triggered as well. So I mean, just today I had somebody send me an actual like meme poster telling me where I could put my opinion up my arse, like a detailed photograph of what I could do with my opinion. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually from a yoga friend. Yoga friend. I'm like, oh, interesting. That's wild. Thanks. Cheers. Um, yeah, and I just think, I unfriend and unfollow when I'm not grokking with someone's residence. I don't feel the need to personally message them of my vehement disagreement. So that's, I mean, that's to me those subtle threads of the kind of past life, the witch hunt energy, feeling very much I'm on trial, feeling very much like I'm being attacked. And there is that, and so I'm witnessing that, and I'm owning that, and I'm really like, we're not in the medieval ages. We're not living in those times. We're living in transformative times. So we're seeing a massive healing of that. I now am a woman who can speak her truth without fear of death and persecution. Those fears are still being triggered up inside my beingness. I'm just not feeding them. I'm not buying into them anymore. I'm actually shining love and light. I'm giving light to the people who attack me rather than dying. rather than being hung or burned or drowned, right? So now I can just see it for, I can see, because it is fear. The attacks are coming from fear, and the attacks in truth come from a wound of very deep self-loathing, self-hatred, self-betrayal, self-contempt. So most of people's actions actually come from a very deep wound of separation, a deep wounded pain. And we're in such denial of that wounded pain that we don't even know that we're doing half the shit that we're doing to protect our own identity of self, to protect our own egoic identity, which is usually a polarity. The ego either wants to protect the image of I am this wonderful awesomeness, or I am this like mean nobody, blah 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 blah. So it protects against. Okay, so that ego projection of that angle of polarity will protect against the darkness. It will judge against it and shame the darkness. The one in the darkness will often shame the light, like fuck you beings of light, fuck you happiness, and that keeps it apart, right? So you keep only hitting up against those singular polarities rather than being a unified being, rather than being a total being who knows, who has the conscious awareness to bring itself back to its center point. So the only way in my experience that I can always come back to my center is to allow the ebbs and flows. Allow myself to be inspired and then transform the density that holds me back. Allow myself to be inspired, transform the density that holds me back. Allow myself, desire it, test it, receive. Desire, test, receive. We keep opening up to higher manifestation and higher desire. We open up a higher vibrational download. That download comes into the physical vessel and uproots the density that blocks us from manifesting on the higher level. But often what we do as beings, we deny. We don't want to look at that polarity. So we keep reaching for higher, but we never get there. We keep running, we keep looping patterns, we keep just chasing, but we never really come back to center because we're not allowing ourselves to look at the polarity. People that are really down on themselves, they don't even give themselves permission to dream. And then people who are all spiritual and love light, they're so afraid of their anger and their darkness that they just stay in their little kind of safe communities. They don't ever really truly express. They don't really truly ever let themselves be honest, because they think their little community will disown them if they actually express their darkness. And I have to be honest with you guys, like that does happen. I had like someone who runs detox, not Yote, it's had nothing to do with Yotam, but another sort of detox school, who claims all love, it's all about love and I just want to love the world. And then a couple weeks ago, I don't want to get your message. Like, she just unsubscribed, unfollowed. I don't want to get your messages anymore. I don't want anything to do with your all to love movement. Why? Because partly because I'm not playing the games anymore. I'm not doing the people pleasing. And ultimately it was about control. I didn't want to suddenly do all the things that they wanted to do, but because I didn't want to do those things, they don't want to support me anymore. They disown that support. They don't want to look at that shade or darkness. They just want to control and manipulate the people around them to feed their deeper wounds, which they don't want to heal, right? And so there's a lot of like weird games going on, a lot of weird ego games going on, and it's all, and the truth of where I'm coming from of non-judgment and compassion is that we have to accept that most of those kind of subtle insidious behaviors, it still all comes from a wound. And you can either stay on that level of wounding or continue to rise. And that's all I've done is I've continued to get to another point. Not here, revolution. Not here, transformation. Not here. You know, my last leap was fucking hardcore. My life was good. You know, I was a successful yoga teacher. I was making good money. I was having holidays multiple times a year. I had a lovely guy, you know, and yet as I stepped in, as I continued to rise, even the lovely people, they don't know, if they can't make sense of what you're doing, they'll judge it. They judge you. You're wrong, you're bad. Your expansion makes me feel uncomfortable about myself, so I'm going to make it your fault, not mine. Instead of owning my unworthiness, I'm going to make it your fault, you fucked up, and I'm just going to find a replacement. You know, and that's often the paradigm. You know, if we're making money and we're getting by, my life looks fine, so I'm fine. Right? Again, we can be very, very detached. We can be very like emotionally disconnected and just think that everything's going on outside of us. Like, her emotions got nothing to do with me. I'm making money. I'm doing my thing. I got my things and my ducks in a row. I'm good. Right? And then it's fine. It is fine. And the point is, again, part of my weirdness is that even as much younger person, I would look around and I could almost get a sense of like a foundation was starting to crumble. So I'm feeling in and sensing that there's a lot of these sort of like middle classes, like sort of kind of ambitious working class, middle classes up into like the kind of elites, right? Where there's like this, almost this like, how do I describe it? Like just a real, like, get out, fuck you, like, I'm not healing. Like, I'm gonna keep powering over because it's worked for me so far. And I got my house and I got my things and I don't need to do the real work because I'm supported. So I can still use my wealth to power over you. And I can honestly say that that's not like basically the masses are really gonna start to rise. The masses are really gonna start to join together and not tolerate it. And this is not like shaming any people with money. This is nothing about money at all, actually. It's about energy of power over, energy of control and domination. And ultimately, if you're not of true value, if you're not really doing the inner work, if you're not being self-responsible, if you're not honestly getting to know who you are and sharing of self, the mass the mass sway will force you, or you won't be able to survive in the new world. Like, us being dishonest, us using power over tactics, that's not going to work anymore. The energy is too high of the mass, of the human collective energy field. The awareness is rising too fast for people to keep playing the games. That's what Oprah Winfrey's speech was about. The time is up. The divine intuitive knowing within us as beings is rising to the point that, again, we can't be playing these boys against girls petty fucking games anymore. We can't be playing these petty games of trying to use each other but lace it in lovely language. Just stop fucking playing games. Just get clear about who you are and be legit about what exchange you want. What are you trying to get from each other? How are you wanting this exchange to go? Is it working? Is it not working? Whatever, you know. But there again, I have to own the fact that I've had to get this honest with myself. I don't blame nobody for anything I've been through. I got to where I am because of me. And I've had to look at all the like so-called bullshit, like all the crappiness that people have dealt me and own it. I'm not a fucking victim. I brought that in. I called that in because I was so concerned about making myself look good, about being some fly fucking yoga teacher or whatever. Then I just got kind of tired of that game and it was like, well, I'm bored and I'm tired. And actually, my heart is still burning to talk about more stuff. That's it, you know? And now it's even next level. I remember when I first started getting paid as a yoga teacher, I was like, sweet, dream come true. This is next level. I get to talk to people about stuff that I'm passionate about and they pay me for it. Fucking rock. My life is amazing. You guys, I love you loads. I hope that was somewhat useful to you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your subscribes and shares and all that kind of stuff. If you ever want to make a donation, or even more, like if you ever want to buy some Alta Love products, please do. You can go to altalove.tmail.com or just altalove.com and you can subscribe and then you can shop and you can buy a book and you can buy some clothes. So there you have it. Love you. Have a great day. Om, peace, 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 peace.